Hello, my dear friends. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back. My name is Sarita. We have a whole month's worth of empties here, and it's a little bit of a light batch, a light box here. I had a terrifically busy kind of month, and I was away from home a lot. So I feel as though I didn't burn quite as many candles as I usually burn, but I still got through a good number of them. So it looks like we have one Homeworx candle. This was our lone Homeworx candle, and this is one that I actually just reviewed like 2 days ago. So this is Golden Bamboo, and it burned all the way down to the wick clips. The wick clips migrated a little bit toward the base of the candle. Burned like a dream. Strength and throw on this one was not as good as it should have been, at least in the first like 4 hours of being burned. Now, this candle is one of those candles though that can be burned for like 10 hours at a time because it was so not sooty at all, and self-trimmed for the most part all the way down. So it was a gorgeous burn in that respect, and very resilient in terms of long-term burning. I got my strongest strength out of it in about the 6-hour mark, 5 to 6 hour mark. I started getting a really strong and gorgeous, like honeyed perfume, white floral kind of vibe from it, almost like a deep honeysuckle, but definitely emphasis on the honey as opposed to the suckle, the blossoms. The notes on this one are fresh bamboo, pink jasmine petals, bergamot leaves, and green woods, but not indicative, I think, of what it is that this candle is, which is essentially a white floral perfume conceptual with strong honey overtones that come out specifically very strong within the last several hours after it's been burned. So as long as you adjust your expectations about strength and throw on this one and really like honey and florals, you might like that one, but I definitely like to see it a little bit stronger, especially for the price point that Harry Slatkin seems to want to be asking for that. Oh my gosh, we have so many Bath & Body Works candles. The only one that's not a Bath & Body Works candle is this one from Stonewall Home, which was Jasmine Berry, and I do recommend this one. This one is Jasmine Berries, Pomegranate, and Rhubarb. And it was a really deep, dark, jammy kind of, stone fruit, very low in the range. If it has floral in it, and it does, it's supposed to have jasmine in it, but unlike the jasmine that's in this, for instance, I mean, jasmine is not a shy flower, and it's one that, for it to be overwhelmed, it has to really be overwhelmed by a lot, and so a lot is in this candle. It's the berries, it's the pomegranate, it's the rhubarb, and it's like deep dark berries, like blackberry, raspberry, currant, pomegranate, maybe even some plum in there. Yeah, it could be like a good fall or cozy weather just because of how dark and jammy it is. Combined with a little bit of musk, I think, on the bottom. But I burned it really nicely here in spring, and it worked really nicely too. Really nice. I did burn it down to the wick clips, but I also had to pour off wax a couple times in about the halfway point of the candle, and I've noticed this for Stonewall Home. The wicks that they're using here are so tiny, they're insufficient, they're inadequate for probably any candle, but certainly inadequate for the wax formula that they're using here. So it does okay for like the first half of the candle, and then after that point, you really have to pour off wax. It gives it another lease on life for a little bit more. But man, the strength and throw on this was very impressive. At least in the 7.5 realm, if not kind of an 8. So it was very strong. And as long as you're okay with like nursing or pouring off some wax, I recommend that one. Okay, then I have a lot of Bath & Body Works. So let's do, well, we've got this William Morris collection. Oh, man. Every time I smell these, like, these were the tinted glass kind of greenhouse Morris tapestry kind of candles. I've got this one, and this one right here. All of them smell great on cold, to be perfectly honest. Woo! Bergamot and Birch is definitely my favorite of the three. Here was Bergamot and Birch right here. Yes, it leans a little bit masculine, as one would expect with the name Bergamot and Birch. Bergamot, amber, and wood. Oh, but it's so nice. I mean, it's really a fairly nuanced, like, men's fragrance that definitely goes much more botanical and rugged than it does in a cliched like cologne direction. And I believe it burned the best of the three of them. I mean, like a dream, absolutely like a dream. Strength and Throw wasn't good. So I would absolutely repurchase this for the fragrance, but it needs to be a lot stronger. Greenhouse Fern. I struggled with this one. As you can see, I've got discoloration and I've got wax there. I struggled with this one at the midway point, doing all the usual things. I kind of like this one. This one is a green floral. Actually, not unlike the Golden Bamboo. In the same genre for sure. What are the notes on this one? Bergamot, violet leaves, and jasmine. Well, makes sense because we have bergamot and jasmine in Golden Bamboo as well. I actually like this one better than Golden Bamboo. It's less perfumey and it's more overtly green and lush, but it's definitely like a green floral. The problem for me is that, and this is true of a lot of Bath & Body Works candles that I've noticed, is sometimes the fragile botanical elements kind of lift off the candle once burned, and then it just kind of becomes a more dull, less complex version of what it is that you smell on cold. And that's kind of what happened to Greenhouse Fern for me a little bit. It did kind of go into a more brassy, like aloe green kind of direction, and I just didn't like it quite as well upon it being burned. It kind of was pressing on my senses and my sinuses a little bit too, and the burn wasn't great on it. But I would say that the Strength and Throw was a little bit better than the other two. It's like sibling candles. This one, I would say, I mean, it didn't do well in the open concept, really, but did much better in the back, where I think I could get it up to at least a 6.5 pretty easily. Back there, I just kind of didn't want it to be that strong, to be honest. The other one in that collection was Lavender and Vetiver. Look how pretty that is. For the most part, burned okay, although it did get discolored, and it did burn all the way down to the wick clips, although one of those clips was sitting a little bit higher than the other two. That's okay. Lavender and Vetiver is the most aromatherapy of this little collection. And it really is Lavender and Vetiver. It's fairly stripped down, and I appreciate that. I do. If you're kind of an aromatherapy person and you don't mind Vetiver and you like lavender, then you're going to like this candle. For me, the performance on it was somewhere in between Bergamot and Birch and Greenhouse Fern. So it was kind of like a 5, something like that. 5.5 back there, yeah. I liked it okay, but I don't know that I found it to be hoard worthy. I liked the lavender vanilla a great deal better. And I loved the conceptual Gwen's note with lavender and sandalwood better too. But it is absolutely fine, and I do appreciate the herbals. For me, this does go in a strongly, though, spa aromatherapy kind of direction rather than like a premium conceptual kind of direction, which, like I said, is totally fine as long as that is your vibe. First Sight. Ah, yes, yes, yes. This burned like a dream, and it burned very quickly. It had the distinction not only of being probably the cleanest burning Bath & Body Works candle that I think I've ever burned, and also the fastest burning. I think I got like 4 or 5 burns out of this. Like, it was just so fast. But man, so clean. I mean, that pool was so clear. You could see the bottom. It was like gorgeous. So this is Baccarat Rouge 540. If you're familiar with the women's perfume, it does lean a touch more masculine, i.e. a little bit less sweet than the original Baccarat Rouge, and definitely less sweet than the dupes of Baccarat Rouge that go sweeter. And I'm looking at you primarily, Ariana Grande Cloud. That fragrance is a very strong dupe of 540, but on the sweeter side. So for me, I love this because I prefer things a little bit less sweet, but it's hard not to like Baccarat Rouge. So I actually have 2 backups of this one. This is one of those candles that originally, like for the first half of the candle, I was like, this is giving me nothing. This is giving me like a 4. And as beautiful as the fragrance is, it's just not giving me much more than that. Sidebar, Kringle has a candle of Baccarat Rouge too. It's called Mon Amour. It is in the 3 to 4 range as well. So I want to hold out the possibility that this has to do with the fragrance rather than the actual candle development here. I'm really happy to say, though, that the second half of this candle appreciably was stronger than the first half. So I think this more solidly got up into the 5 to 6 realm for the bottom half of the candle, and I was here for it. In fact, it was doing so well that I even brought it out into the open concept for like one last hurrah just to see, and it did do a little bit better in the open concept than it did originally, but it did do much better. I mean, its home is probably in a more like developed master bedroom kind of situation, and it's the fragrance for it. It is kind of a very sensual, like personal fragrance kind of vibe. I love it, and despite the masculine marketing, I think that there are a lot of women who would love this candle. I think it's a real standout. Also, if you're a fan of In the Stars from Bath & Body Works, this one is real similar to it. It is not a dupe of In the Stars. It's a dupe of Baccarat Rouge 540. And although In the Stars shares some fragrance notes with Baccarat Rouge, In the Stars is a different fragrance than Baccarat Rouge, and so it's not redundant of In the Stars. I do like In the Stars as well. So if you like In the Stars and you're not even familiar with Baccarat Rouge 540, I think you would very much like that candle. That was part of the wedding collection, and like I said, weirdly marketed as the groom's candle as opposed to the bride's candle. The bride's candle was dressed in white in this stunning wraparound right here. This one also burned fairly well. It did burn down to the wick clips, but one wick clip was sitting very weirdly high. So unfortunately, it left a good deal of wax here. For the most part, it did well. I've got some carbon residue here at the bottom, and it is a little bit more of a fragile white floral kind of vibe. I don't think it stands up particularly well to carbon, to sooting, etc. Thankfully, it didn't have a lot of sooting. I don't think it burned quite as well as the Baccarat Rouge candle, first sight, but it burned fairly well. This is a very fresh and bright white floral. I believe it has a good amount of bergamot in it. So this says pear blossom, gardenia, and satin woods, whatever that is. It does have a good amount of like kind of sugared musk. In the same way, I would say that this is like an enormous amount of sugared musk. This is a little amount of sugared musk. And then it's got that beautiful, like, bright, fruity white floral on top. Bath & Body Works does fruity white florals really well. Often they tend to go a little bit generic body care-ish. This one doesn't go quite as generic body care-ish, so I'm kind of here for it. It's not quite as soapy as many of their candles in this genre. I think it's fairly balanced. For me, the brightness on top is a little bit more citrusy than it is pear, but I could totally see how pear is an element here that is giving it that kind of bright juiciness. But yeah, I would call it like a white floral that has kind of a fruity overtone to it or fruity finish to it. I just don't know if it's that much of a standout to be like a marquee wedding day, bride's day kind of candle. I probably would not repurchase it. But I can't say that like I'm a huge floral person. You have to have a pretty fantastic floral candle for me to want to repurchase it. For me, this quarter at Bath and Body Works, Tropidelic was the white floral to beat, and it is the one that I did repurchase a couple times. Yes, the performance, the strength and throw needed to be much stronger on it, but ultimately I thought that it was the most interesting and the most lovely of all of the white florals and all of the fruity white florals that have been on the floor, and especially the new ones this first part of the year. So I nominate Tropidelic. I think that the brightest bloom is not particularly good. It's heavy and it's a bit more cliched. So if you put brightest blooms on, or brightest blooms, best blooms, whatever it is, I can never remember. If you put that on one pole and Tropidelic on the other, Dressed in White for me is somewhere in the middle. Not quite as special as Tropidelic, but certainly better and more balanced than brightest blooms. All right, this one is from, I just reviewed this a few days ago, You, Me, and the Sea, which is part of, or was part of the mini collection for Black History Month, and it was the creator developer series featuring Gwen Gonzalez, who developed all 4 new fragrances, which was really fantastic because in the subsequent, or in the preceding designer series, they either did not have a new candle, they were just kind of like repackages of fragrances that are already done and just kind of highlighting the creator of the fragrance, or in the second case, or in the second tier of designer candles that we had, the second wave, we did, I think, have 1 or 2 new candles, and then the other 2 were not new. This, I think, is the first one where all 4 were brand new, and I think it's far and away the best little designer collection that we've had so far, but unfortunately was really underhyped, and I think hobbled by the fact that the packaging was really not that pretty, and I feel especially bad about that because they did try to this time especially highlight the designer of the aesthetic label, who is Katria Judkins. But as I've said many, many times, I suspect that Katria had an aesthetic vision that was not quite executed. It happens all the time in the arts world. There are just some like real obvious seams, and although I love the ombre of this collection, it just didn't come across quite as evocatively as it should have, and I think probably having the glass ombre rather than a label would certainly have helped, but probably also increase the cost. Also, there's this huge block label on all of them with a lot of words, like a ton of words, a quote, all these different things, which does make sense of some of the names of the candles in this collection. I just said this last time. Gwen's Note, for instance, is frankly not a candle name that is either going to do justice to the fragrance or travel well past to this mini collection, because without the quote, without the background, without all the educational materials alongside, people are going to be left wondering why Gwen is writing a note. Who is Gwen? Why should we care? Like that kind of thing. So we do hope that when Gwen's Note is repackaged as something else, oh gosh, I'm really hoping so, because for me, Gwen's Note was really actually quite special. I think it needs a different name, and I think it needs a new like marketing moment. Anyway, You, Me, and the Sea was one of the 4. This is the aquatic briny herbal one, and it's very nice. It's very nice. There is kind of like a vague marine soapiness to it in the way that Bath & Body Works sometimes does, aquatic soapiness. But I would say that there's a great deal of restraint in this soapiness and a good deal of restraint in the way that this particular aquatic comes forward. So that it's not a Bath & Body Works cliche. It really is a very briny, salty, ocean air, ozone, mineral kind of vibe with some herbal overtones to it. So the notes say blue orchid, fresh eucalyptus, and salt water. And of those three notes, salt water is the one that you're definitely gonna appreciate. Orchids don't really have a huge amount of smell. Yes, there is some floral here. But it's just kind of a floral that is enhancing the aquatic as opposed to the reverse. It being like a floral that has aquatic overtones. It's exactly the opposite. It's an aquatic, and the floral, it's kind of an aquatic kind of floral vibe, like a lotus vibe or something like that. It's just lifting up the aquatic nature of it. And there is something vaguely herbal. Although if you were asked to pick out what the herbal is, I don't know that you would necessarily go for eucalyptus. So if you're one of those people, and I am, who's a little shy of eucalyptus and worried about what often comes across as a very like harsh, almost mentholated coolness, or like an aromatherapy kind of vibe, I would not be concerned here. It's not an overly cool candle. And if there is eucalyptus here, I would say it's of the baby variety, which is to say that it's almost adding kind of more of a warm lavender kind of herbal smell here, or even something like sage or something like that. I mean, it's a little bit more of a soft herbal bite, but it's not taking over the candle, and it's definitely not, I don't think it would be off-putting if you're not necessarily an herbal person. You do have to be an aquatic person, though. And you do have to really like the briny ocean vibe to like Yumi in the Sea. Performance was really not bad on this one at all, and had better strength and throw than even Gwen's note. I would say this one consistently hit 7, maybe 7.5 in the open concept. I did not have to take this one to the back bedroom. So a very strong performer in that respect. This one has been around for a long time in the catalog. Mahogany Vanilla. I actually have this one in a mason jar, a 1-wick. I've had it for a real long time because this is one of those candles that just smells amazing, at least on cold. So the mahogany here is of mahogany teakwood fame, which needs no introduction if you know anything about Bath & Body Works' catalog. Mahogany teakwood is their very dark, rich, cliched men's cologne kind of fragrance. It's definitely a little bit of an acquired taste, but it's been around for so long at this point that there's kind of a cult following for it. And in the same way that there is for like Midsummer Night, for Yankee Candle, very similar kind of vibe. So they've used mahogany then to kind of mash up many other kinds of different candles, mahogany and oud, mahogany and this, mahogany and that, mahogany and balsam, vanilla, coconut, etc., etc. Of all of them, for my money, mahogany vanilla smells the best, which is actually, it smells the best at least on cold. It's not a surprise there. When you have that dark and musky a note, it needs relief. It needs some sort of other fragrance element that's going to be a counterpoint that is going to cut some of that like deep cologne muskiness. And vanilla is always the right note for that. So this, even on paper without smelling it, you could probably put good money on the fact that this is probably going to be one of the best combinations, this mahogany and vanilla. And man, it smells good. It's got a ton of vanilla, and it needs a ton of vanilla to face off against that mahogany note. It burned fine. That's just from like maybe the window being open, whatever else. I personally did not like this as well once it was burned as when I smelled it cold. I just don't think that it improves upon it being burned. And for me personally, it didn't do it any favors being burned. I liked it better smelling it on cold. The reverse would be Mahogany Coconut, which I actually don't like very much smelling it on cold. I think it smells off-putting and odd. But then once Mahogany Coconut is burned, it's like magical. It's magical. This one is just kind of the reverse. It smells magical on cold, and then on burned, not so much. It's a very low strength and throw. The vanilla here starts coming across like almost a little bit medicinal, as in a vanilla extract kind of way, which then just kind of adds an artificiality and a heaviness. And it needs to not be artificial or heavy to be creating magic with mahogany teakwood, if that makes sense. And I don't notice it as much on cold, where it's creamy and almost floral. And I think that's where it needs to be. It needs to be creamy, sweet, and almost floral to go up against and be the counterpoint for mahogany. But then once it's burned, it kind of goes in a more vanilla extract direction for me personally. So I would not repurchase Mahogany Vanilla, but I will absolutely repurchase Mahogany and Coconut, and I have also reviewed that one on this channel. Very last one here is Blue Verbena and Lime in this lovely dusty blue neutrals packaging. This is a brand new candle for this year. Sugared lime, zesty verbena, and garden thyme. Oh man, this smells so special on cold. Here's another candle that really is almost a standout in a brilliant way on cold, and then once you burn it, like all of that brilliance goes away. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that there are a lot of beautiful, authentic botanical elements in this candle, like the thyme, which is not coming across here as a like dried thyme, but as a green, vivacious, fresh thyme herb. And then it's got this lime again, which is coming across not like a lime juice that's in your refrigerator, but like as a bright, just zested kind of lime. And then the verbena, which is also coming across with a great deal of like greenness and vivacity, and like it's very fresh, very garden fresh. It's a very garden fresh kind of candle, along with a background of something that feels kind of ambery, a little bit perfumey, so that you've got basically like a perfume conceptual in the background, and in the foreground you have these amazing, fresh, authentic garden green kind of fragrance elements, and they're unique ones too. They kind of take you to that Jo Malone place, where like Jo Malone has those amazing mashups of like herbs, of fruits, of just it's a really, really beautiful, almost premium kind of smell and promise on cold. And then once it's burned, unfortunately, all of the gorgeous green, authentic elements kind of lift off or sink into the candle almost in a visceral fashion, and just kind of leaves you with this like really muddy, muddled kind of, I don't know, musky concoction. And there's a flatness to it, and it just doesn't have the same brilliance. So it's just one of those candles that, or one of those fragrances that smells great on cold and just does not do well once burned. It doesn't translate. And the strength and throw on it is very, very weak. I mean, like, it spent its entire life in the guest bathroom and even struggled to fill up a tiny guest bathroom, like that kind of vibe. And then if you shut the door and tried to appreciate it at like a better volume, it quickly became overwhelming, because unfortunately it was just like that really deep, like muddled kind of musky thing, and lost like all of its brilliance. So in a weird way, also very, very weak and also very overwhelming. which was so unfortunate. But I really hope that Bath & Body Works keeps this up and is just trying to experiment, think outside the box, and I think really pushing outside of their kind of cliched Bath & Body Works. This is also a shower gel kind of vibe, which, don't get me wrong, no shade for that. That is their bread and butter. It's where they make their money. But I appreciate that they're really trying some new things and pushing past the bounds of that, even in a more like premium, innovative kind of direction. And I think these candles are also indicative of the consumer starting to change their preferences as well. They want to see some really intriguing, authentic, botanical kind of, fragrances and premium offerings, something unique, something that hasn't been smelled. And so without Bath & Body Works completely throwing out all the things that they do really well and still continue to sell well for them, I appreciate that they're on the margins starting to experiment in these ways. And some of these experiments land and some of them don't. But even when they don't, I'm really happy that they're trying them. So that was that. So not a whole lot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, only 10. Only 10. I did spend a good portion of the second half of this month, though, burning a couple Yankee candles that I picked up at Target. But because Target only gives us like the large tumblers, I'm growing old trying to burn through these candles, because I really don't feel comfortable giving you guys a review until I have burned a candle all the way down to the wick clips, or until I can proceed no further. So those Yankee candles should probably be coming up relatively soon, but that took up a lot of time. And I actually had a little candle by La Montagne, which is a luxury brand. I brought it out at my birthday, very late March, and I've been kind of nursing it as my like bedside candle, and I really love it. So we're gonna do a review of that pretty much coming up soon. So along with these 10, there were a few others that I burned too, but I'm just not quite through with them and not quite ready to do a review. So those are kind of included. I feel like I need to make an apology for I didn't get through enough candles. I'm so sorry. But that's how some months are. You just, in the flux of life, like just some months are shyer than other ones. So we're on to May. Thank you so much for joining me in April, and let's see what we can get through in May. Thank you so much. Catch you guys in the next one.